we're leaders in the industry. We are leaders in this segment, definitely. And we're always pushing the needle to make everyone else better because we can always be better.
Everyone eats out, but people often miss how the food arrives on their plate. Every meal has a story of growers, suppliers, founders, and operators making it all happen. Welcome to Grounded. I'm Lauren Mitchell, and each week I will bring you conversation with the amazing people behind the brands you know and the ones you'll want to know. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, the leading food service digital procurement network, powered by data, software, and collaborative relationships. Let's get grounded.
I'm very excited to speak with today's guest. She's a seasoned professional in the restaurant and hospitality industry, currently serving as Vice President of Procurement at Snooze A.M. Eatery. In her current role, she led a supply chain expansion that fueled 20% year-over-year growth, scaling the brand from 9 to 68 locations. She's been featured in Chain magazine for her insights on sustainability and strategies for long-term supply chain success, and a trusted voice in the industry. She currently serves on the Core Trust of Hospitality Advisory Board. Cindy Keys, welcome to the show. Welcome. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. I'm very excited to see you again. I had the pleasure of meeting you in person in the fields, 2 weeks ago now in California. Cold, chilly California. Oh my goodness. I saw you through Nature Right. I think we went through some berry fields together. Overall, just tell me a little bit about the experience you had there, maybe something that stood out to you as a result of getting to put boots in the ground out there. Yeah, I think, for me, it's always very humbling. I haven't been on that trip or that conference. I think the last time I went was probably 6-7 years ago. It was definitely before the pandemic, but it's just humbling to actually be there, where it all begins, where it all starts, right? Where the food chain starts. I like to say, sort of, just because I don't think people, even our own snoozers, which we call our employees snoozers, like, they don't understand all the layers involved. They just think you place an order and it shows up at your back door, right? Yeah. But there's multiple layers to get from point A to point B, right? And all those layers in between. And it's so humbling to see all those steps and have a complete understanding of how our food chain works. And just seeing all the work and love and passion that the farmers and the growers have to make that perfect berry. I think when we went on that tour, that part of the tour, I was so taken back by the genetics of it, of the berries, and how it took, like, what was it, 6 to 8 years for one varietal, and the steps involved to make the mate of the female and the male. And so it's just cool to see that whole process. For me, I think just gives me such more of appreciation. It was a fascinating demonstration. They actually physically showed with a razor blade how that seed is removed. Yes. What an articulate woman, too, to speak so eloquently about the process of seed breeding. And I thought, they made the connections to our retail environment today with the sweetest batch and some of these sweet berries and cherry snacking tomatoes. So to your point, to take that down to the field and understand really the time and investment taken to every single part of that process to even prove out one variety was really fascinating. It's super cool to see and experience. Yeah. It is. And it was so fun to see members of your brand out there. There's so much pride for Snooze. You guys all had matching shirts at every tour. The marketing team, I believe, was there, and they were videographing the tractors and the harvest when we were over at Taylor. And I just thought, wow, these guys are just fired up, and it just seems like a lot of fun. Your crew, yeah, they are. That's what makes us unique. We're family. Yes, you guys are very unique. I can't wait to get into the brand a little bit, and also just you professionally. You are a standout woman in this field. And take us back. I heard you mention that when you were little, used to tell your mom that you wanted to be a restaurant when you grew up.
Yeah.
Yes, I used to always say that. I think the restaurant industry runs in my family. It's in our blood. She worked in a restaurant, and I was always, you look up to your parents. So I was like, I want to be a restaurant, and she was like, you can't be a restaurant. You can work in a restaurant. It definitely wasn't my goal, my intention. It was more an ends to the means to get me through college. I was actually going to college for communications and wanted to be a sportscaster. So that's a different story. But yeah, I got sucked in. I kind of like to say, and 40 years later, I'm still in the industry. Started very young as a hostess for a company organization in Michigan. And the gentleman that owned it became my mentor. He took me under his wing. I learned every aspect in the industry, front of the house and back of the house, operations, and worked my way up from a hostess to a server to his first youngest uh, assistant manager. I think I was 21 when I became manager. To a GM, to a corporate catering director, to a corporate trainer, and everything in between. And so from there, fast forward, I've been fortunate to work for some very good companies with longevity. And when I became a mother, my world changed. And, if you work in operations, the hours are crazy. And I didn't want to be working weekends and holidays and nights and days. And so I took a step back in my career and went into procurement. And it was, Monday through Friday, day job, weekends off. So I was able to be present and be with my children. And now I've been with Snooze now 10 and a half years. And I run the procurement department, and we oversee all the categories, except for basically furniture, fixture, and equipment. Very cool. You have worked in all levels, all angles of the restaurant. Yes, I had read that about it, and I really appreciate those that come up into procurement or spend purchasing roles. Some go at different directions. Some focus on franchise development. Some focus specifically on a finance end. Can you make the connection specifically for us and how all of that experience in working in the restaurant has influenced your approach to procurement strategy? Yeah, I think it definitely gives you a better perspective as like I like to say like the whole 360, the whole picture of understanding having an operator's mindset and then understanding the other side of it too, like what the needs are, what the wants are, what doesn't work, what does work, right? And then having that knowledge and then basing the decisions on execution, is it executable, and supporting the restaurant's day by day operations, and is it practical, right? I always have the perspective is, it's not always the cost or the best contract in procurement. It's more like, does this operationally flow? Does the distribution and logistics work? How does this impact our guests? How does this impact our operators? So I always say that I look at cost last because that's always negotiable. But it's really, all the other factors involved first, and does it make sense? And I think an example would be like, are we aligning our delivery schedules with our distributors to accommodate the best optimal time to deliver for our restaurant operators to be able to check in and order thoroughly, and we're not delivering in the middle of a rush, right? Where they got a line out the door for 2 hours, and having and being able to build a relationship and rapport with the drivers. So it's like bridging the gap between sourcing and operational execution. And obviously, does it make economic sense? Absolutely. Been talking a little bit about costs, as you mentioned. And again, having come from operations and doing supplier tours, I talk to a lot of guests that follow the path of their products from beginning to end, just to really break down those cost components. Has that supported that understanding for you, or perhaps lit any light bulbs in understanding price and maybe even how to improve pricing just based on following the path of any of your products? Or is that just come just based from experience and operation side? Yeah, it's more just experience. I mean, you always want to have visibility and traceability of where the products are coming, obviously, because that's a food safety issue. So we want to make sure that we have that connection. Um, so, yeah, I mean, I think that's always a part of it. But as far as costs, and I just want to make sure I'm understanding your question, like cost mitigation, are you? Cost mitigation is another side of it, really just cost understanding. I imagine those that, and this may be for someone newer in the role, right? You have much more experience, but uh, perhaps you're given a new category, and it's not until you actually take the walk or the path of the product that you understand, okay, so wait a second, it's coming from here. They also have fields over in this region. Have we looked at sourcing our East Coast stores? Yeah, you definitely need to do your homework and do your research. And I think, talking to suppliers, distributors, networking, right? I hold network calls with different people in the industry with different concepts and bounce ideas off each other and like, oh, where are you getting this from? Where are you getting this from? Like, what's your experience? And again, not about cost. It's always more like, what is your experience? Like, are they performing for you? Are they supportive? Is the communication there? The transparency there? And yeah, I mean, I don't think you should always, I think it's very good to have an idea of what is going on in the market at all times and then under a good understanding of that so you can make those strategic decisions, especially as you grow and you spread out and you have East Coast and West Coast. Like we're predominantly West Coast, but like we've been going into the East Coast. And so now it's like, okay, is this gonna, are what we're doing now, does that still work? Do we need to have two suppliers, one doing East, one doing West, and having those conversations, and what, logistically and the efficiencies around that, and how does that affect our costs? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the growth of a brand geographically, once you start to get out of your core area, as most do, eventually you grow out of that strong regional presence and you go into other states. And especially if you start bringing on franchise programs, that completely upends your role in the sense of just kind of re-looking at logistics and distribution for other regions in the country. Yeah, and it's really hard when you go into a region and you only have one or two restaurants. Like, that's a whole nother challenge in itself, and we've had to work through those challenges too, where we've had one and we still do today. We have, like, a couple of restaurants in Kansas, we have 4 in North Carolina and 2 in Nevada and 2 in Tennessee, and so we've had to make exceptions outside of what maybe our specs were or who our purveyors were and source locally until we build more density in those markets to have, not a list like this of special order items. Yeah. And make it more even, that adds more complexity to the operators. So, yeah, you always have to continue to think outside the box and what really makes economic sense and builds like efficiencies, execution again for the operators to operate efficiently without having a lot of the struggles so they can spend their time on the guests versus spending their time on chasing product. Sure. How about just with the updates and sustainability expectations and standards out there, or even with tariffs? Have those had an impact on your sourcing strategy? Can you talk a little bit about either? Yeah, absolutely. Tariffs, and just the volatility of the commodity markets, especially like coffee. If anyone's following coffee, it's been very volatile the last 3 years, and we're still experiencing that now. And we're hopefully in 2026 we'll have some relief. But right now, that's a hot commodity. And the tariffs, right? That's a day to day, and sometimes hourly thing. But we've definitely, have taken some increased cost due to certain categories that are important, coffee being one, packaging being another. And so for us, it's really being proactive on that and working closely with our manufacturers. And either, some of our manufacturers are moving their plants to other parts of or different parts of the countries where the tariffs are less of a burden, or they're actually, some of them are moving them into the US, which is great. because it cuts down lead times as well. And then, there's been instances where we've actually just had to change our sourcing strategy and bring it into domestic sourcing versus out of the country. And so though that definitely has had an impact. Um, and when I mentioned packaging, like that's part of that sustainability, like it plays a role. Like we're potentially now we have a hybrid of packaging where it's like our EPT plastic lids and then a Bagasse compostable bottom. And we're kind of thinking, do we go to a fully recyclable, but maintaining the integrity of the product for durability and transport? But it's the rise of costs, and we all expect to be profitable, so we really have to think outside the box. Absolutely. Could you imagine if you got to go back to college and just major and master in supply chain, especially with all the updated policy? How cool our restaurant systems would look coming out of an education like that, just given all the change. Yeah. Lots of learning. Hands-on is always the best, I feel. But also networking, as you touched on. I think speaking to other people from other brands and sharing learnings, especially sometimes conferences afford us those master sessions too, which is great. Yeah, I think invaluable because, I don't want to say too many heads in the room, but always having other heads in the room, other minds, different perspectives, things that come up that you didn't think about. So it's always good to bounce ideas off each other. When talking about approaching a decision between a national versus a local supplier, I'm sure tariff is obviously one of these considerations, but can you speak a little bit about how you're making those decisions for the brand, especially being heavy in breakfast? And I imagine dairy just being such a high local item for brands. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to decisions with that? Yeah, I mean, we it's easier to, like, when I first started with Snooze, we had 9 locations. We did a lot of local, regional sourcing. But as you continue to scale and grow into more and more markets, because I think we only had 3 markets at the time, it becomes a little bit more challenging. And, we love to be able to support regional and local suppliers, but you also want to have high quality and you want to have consistency, right? We say our perfect plate. So we definitely want to make sure we're always serving our perfect plate to our guests. So, we're always weighing in consistency, logistics, and in the brand fit. Like, does this fit for us who we're working with? That's a huge part of our sourcing standards. But there's stuff that we still do locally, but there's also things like our core items, and proteins comes to mind. Like, that's a huge one for us. And, proteins pretty much hit every plate. So we definitely want to make sure that we have national representation on our proteins to ensure that quality and consistency. But like produce, we do that all locally. We work with 12 different produce companies across our system. Cold brew and beer, it's always nice to have a local flair on beer and cold brew. That's a thing, and people recognize the brand recognition within their regions. But on higher volume items like proteins and eggs, those are things that we do more on a national level to maintain that quality and consistency. How have your relationships with suppliers from both layers driven your growth or supported your growth? Our suppliers, I mean, they're a big role. They play a big role with us. I always like to say I think of our partners as partners, and that it's truly a collaboration and connection versus something that is transactional. Yeah. It's not transactional. It's always about being very transparent with them, honest, and communicating. I mean, I talk to our suppliers on a weekly basis, maybe not the same ones every week, but I'm in constant communication with them, and the level of support that we get from them for a brand that is 68 locations versus an organization or concept that is, 500 to 600 plus restaurants. We probably get better support and collaboration than they do, and they go above and beyond. And I think that really just speaks volumes to who we are in our brand recognition and how we respect each other and how we collaborate. And, it's just I've I said that I've been fortunate to work with really good companies, but I've said this many times, I don't think I'd rather have been working with an organization during the pandemic than any other one than I did with Snooze, because the amount of support that we got in collaboration that we got was just it, I don't even know how to explain it. It was like so heartfelt and genuine. And, they don't care that we only have 68 locations. They just want to work with Snooze. Everyone wants to work with Snooze. Like, I think that's what makes it so prideful to work for is that, that they love what we do. We don't just walk the walk and talk the talk. I mean, we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk, and we follow through. And we're leaders in the industry. We are leaders in this segment, definitely. And we're always pushing the needle to make everyone else better, because we can always be better. I can be better. We can all be better. And so how do we do that? And how do we do it cohesively and collaborating? And so, when we talk about expansion and growth, like, they're just part of that. They're part of our family, and they show up to our openings, and they're excited to be there, and they tell their stories. And, we are so big on storytelling with Snooze, and our snoozers love to know the story of our suppliers. And they love to tell it. So yeah, very cool. So, Vice President of Procurement, and we've talked about the multi-state presence that you guys have. And one of the biggest challenges just keeping visibility and eye on all of these end products and stores. How do you keep visibility into your supply chain? And perhaps can you share a tool or two that has been beneficial for your experience? Yeah, we have multiple things that we do. We have weekly meeting with a lot of our distributors. Sometimes we have 2 to 3 weekly meeting, and that's like, I'm not joking about that. And there's a healthy agenda that goes with it. And so it's having the conversations, being proactive, getting ahead of any issues, I'll say out of stocks mostly, right? And what the future supply looks like as far as POs and menu LTOs and things like that, and what's available, what's not available, what are the challenges that everyone's seeing, supply chain disruptions and things like that. But we get daily reports, we get weekly reports, whether it's from our produce houses or our GPOs that we work with or our broadline distributors. And we're very engaged in monitoring the inventory levels and the invoicing and the pricing and et cetera. Weekly commodity reporting, we look at that. We look at supply chain insights and trends. Our GPO for produce fresh concepts, we get different reports from them, and we use Data Essentials. And we have like our GPO for produce fresh concepts, we have like produce evaluations that is very useful for us as well, and along with the insights that they provide on trends and commodity pricing for the week. And like, we were just talking about lemons, right? And iceberg and like avocados and all the issues that go on the produce side. But they also do evaluation reports, which are super, super beneficial to ensure not only the quality of the produce and address any concerns, but also just extending the shelf life of our produce. Like, where should it be? There's different zones in your walk-in, and where should you be putting the strawberries, or where should you be putting the lettuce and citrus and things like that, and tomatoes. So those are always extremely helpful that we pass on to the teams as well. The reports are awesome. They provide photographic documentation of what the products look in any given unit. They provide recommendations on the cooler storage, which is very helpful to support shelf life. And then even just the feedback from the GM there on that specific shift or day, just in terms of any concerns that they're having with their distributor partner. It's great to have those tentacles out there. Yeah, it's literally just we have a new regional for Texas, and he was in here. He's in Denver training. And I was literally just telling him about those reports this morning. I'm like, I encourage you to go over them with everyone because, it has such great information to share with everyone. And they're so knowledgeable and they're the experts in the field. So what's great too is it's a living body. So when Fresh Concepts gets feedback or Produce Alliance in terms of, when our operators are using them and hey, I noticed that it has this, but I'm wondering, can you guys do this? And then we'll add that in. It's really it kind of evolves just based on those that are using it, how it's supporting them. So and I think the pictures are invaluable. Yes, 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 yes. You mentioned meeting with distributors. Do you mind if I ask if those are standing or are those based on need? Our meetings are standing. That's amazing. We have cadence, cadence meeting. Yeah, they're on their calendar every week. That's amazing. I'm all about communication and being proactive. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's talk out of supply chain for a minute and talk about industry trends and so many fun things going on out there. I'm sure you've walked the show when you're in Monterey too. But are there any trends that you're seeing right now in the food service industry that are particularly capturing your attention? I think proteins are a trend. I think like the plant-based, or like they all have variety, but like plant-based proteins, I think of that, and it really had its hype and its peak. I think it's kind of losing its hype a little bit, but I think there's still room in the category itself. Yeah. But I think that there's the other proteins like leaner, healthier proteins that are also coming. Like chicken is really taken off. More so, I think that sort of happened too, just because beef is not so available and the pricing is so high, but lean, high quality animal proteins are definitely a thing. I think the smaller portions, due to, the high rise of use of the GLPs, I think that's definitely been a trend. And you see articles in like Nation Restaurant News and anytime I open up my email, there's always something else about that particular study. But guests are wanting smaller portions or they're sharing plates because of that. And then mocktails, like that space is just growing like tenfold. And, I think the Gen Z and millennials are definitely pushing that because they're not honestly, consuming as much alcohol. But they still want that experience and that ambiance of holding that drink. And so I think mocktails definitely have made, that space is growing, largely. And I think it includes anything from a mocktail to juices even. I think of the juices, like we have our butterfly pea powder, and it turns purple, which is so Instagrammable. And I think that's a big one. So yeah, I think those are the big ones. And just like the healthy-ish, crave is still there. People want indulgent, but they also want it to be healthy. Yeah. And again, Gen Z and millennials are definitely pushing that. They want variety though, like from a cultural diversity aspect, they want the different cuisines and the genres, but they still want it to be sort of better for you. Sure. I haven't drinking in years. And I would always have to search for it was pretty much water or Diet Coke. So it's interesting. I'm over 40, but I'm now loving mocktails because they're appear more frequently. And yeah, there was a time I'm sure you could have ordered anything without alcohol, but that wasn't as apparent. And then because it wasn't, I just wasn't trying it. But now when I go out for an evening and I do have a really creative, interesting mocktail, it is such a fun way to complement a dish. And it's so delicious. I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan. And I have two daughters, 26 and almost 24, but like they don't really, well, one doesn't drink at all and the other one barely drinks. And we just went out to dinner last week and we're like, there's like sections now. There was never sections. It's probably like the secret menu. Oh, yeah, we can do that. But now there's like mocktail sections, right? And they're getting so creative. And we all ordered 3 different ones just so we could try each other before I love it. Light. Very good. Well, that's a great one. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to get into Snooze A.M. It is such an incredible brand, as we talked about. For those that just give us the lay of the land. So we've talked a little bit about what states you're in, but just talk about what values the brand is grounded in and what can one expect when walking into a restaurant.
Yeah. So I always say, if you know the Jetsons, that's what it's like to walk into a Snooze with high energy though, and the vibrant colors and music playing, and everyone is having fun. So we're definitely that. Um, but we really ground ourselves in our values, which is we refer to it as our compass, which is a direct correlation to our snooze jack, which is you can see right here. It's like our iconic symbol there, our snooze jack. And each point on that compass represents a different value. So we're very, very intentional with that. And north being our true north is our guests. And then we go snoozers, and we have passion, and we have community, individuality, sustainability, craveability, craveable, and best of the best. And so they all have their own meanings to that, and we like to live by those values. So I think that's something that we do very well. But yeah, when you walk into Snooze, like we like to say, everything that we do has a twist on it. I will say our old tagline, because we are rebranding, is breakfast but different. But we like to do everything and make a twist on it. Our pancakes, we're definitely known for our pancakes. And we used to do a pancake of the day in every restaurant. So you would have 68 different pancakes of the day, so to speak, right? But then it went from pancake of the day to pancake of the week, now pancake of the moment, because again, sometimes when you scale, things get a little bit more complex and you can't always do what you always did. So we've evolved that now to pancake of the moment. So we'll just, we'll feature it. It's always on social media. It's always on our little board when you walk in. But we definitely do pancakes well, and we like to have fun with them. And you can always order a pancake flight, which is 3 different pancakes. We have our signature one, but you can always compose that and mix and match them if you would like. And then, we have like our basic classic, right? Eggs, protein, hash browns, and toast. Like that is our number one seller still. But we do things like our burrito and our tacos and habanero pork belly fried rice, and our Benedicts. We have a Benedict section, which is amazing. And you can do the Benny Duo, where you can have 2 different Benedicts, half and half. So that's always fun. So yeah, we do breakfast with a twist, and our Bloody Marys and all of our mimosas and things like that, and our mocktails. But it's always very I'd like to say, like, it's a destination place to some, I think. We do cater from anywhere from, a 5-year-old to an 85-year-old, with our main demographics being like, millennials, Gen Z. But we have our ravers, we call them, that are our frequent diners.
For those listening, if you haven't been on their website, check out their website, because when she says vibrant, your marketing team is killer. And really just the whole culture is so vibrant on there. You guys have Spotify playlists. You talk about cornhole playing in the back. I mean, this is breakfast, brunch, and lunch. By the way, are you guys open?
So that's our new tagline. That is our new tagline. It actually goes live next week. So it is the breakfast, brunch, and lunch now. And we are really trying to lean into lunch more and capture that part of the day, because we are open 6:30 to 2:30. On the weekends, we are open, depending on the restaurant, depending on the market, anywhere from 2:30 to 4 o'clock being the latest. So we have extended hours on the weekends. But, part of our rebrand work was freshly fueled, and is based on the need to have that healthier dish to attract more guests during the weekday. And so we've done like weekday menu, our weekday parts menu, we call it, where, there's value proposition and perceived value, smaller portions and things like that. But yeah, so we're testing lunch in 4 markets, right? Or excuse me, not 4 markets, 4 restaurants right now.
Actually, it goes live next week. We'll be testing that. So we hope to have some good results out of that. We've had like breakfast sandwiches and things on the menu, but we've really never had like a lunch menu like kind of called out on the menu. Although you can get breakfast any time of the day, I think. And sometimes I eat it for dinner. So, but we'll have some salads and soup and sandwiches and things like that. So
Yeah.
and smoothies. We've never had smoothies either, so that's gonna be on the menu, so we're excited for that.
I think you guys are going to do great for lunch. I was actually speaking with Farmer Boys last week, and they are open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But he's like, there are so many people that come in of all ages to order a breakfast item during dinner time.
Yeah, they do.
It's so interesting. Okay, so you're not the impact director for the brand. I believe you guys have someone that's designated for that, but it really is important to talk about. I mean, you just mentioned it. Sustainability is one of your core values. You guys have the snooze approved standards on your website. I think it's really something that sets you guys apart as it's an important part of your philosophy in terms of when you're selecting ingredients and understanding items. It asks questions like, is it craveable, respectful of animals, respectful of humans? Can you just touch a little bit on any other examples that you guys have put forward that kind of demonstrates this importance of sustainability and or like snooze approved standards that you guys have over your restaurant?
Yeah, I mean, for us, it's, we always say, like, "How can we make an impact?" And it only takes a moment to make a difference. And so how are we impacting our communities? How are we impacting our Mother Earth, our environment? How are we impacting our snoozers? How are we impacting our guests, right? And so the snooze approved, what, we call it, was really started as a set of rigorous standards on how we source our food and beverage. And so that kind of where that comes from. And to your point, you mentioned, like the non-confinement, ABF is a minimum on all of our proteins, our cage-free eggs, we've been cage-free forever. And no hormones, no preservatives, all that stuff, right? But we do so many other great things within the communities, and that help not only the communities and benefit the communities, but also Mother Earth. And I don't think people always realize that. And I think our marketing team has been doing an incredible job over the last couple of years, really telling that story, right? Because again, we like to story tell, and they've been doing an incredible job really getting that out there. I think one of the things I love that we do every year is we support our farms in Guatemala for our coffee, and we work with 2 farms, and we call it One Tree, One Snoozer. And every year we plant a tree on their farms for every snoozer that we have. So
Cool.
yeah, and so I was actually just talking. Clint is actually our director of impact, and he oversees, all of our sustainability initiatives. And we have a board called the Change Makers, which is a twofold. It's sustainability and community together. And so he oversees a lot of those initiatives. He oversees that board, that committee as well. And I sit on that committee. But the One Tree, One Snoozer is such a cool story. We were talking about it yesterday. And I think last year we planted close to 2,700 trees, I want to say. Don't quote me on that because I might be wrong, but it's somewhere around there. And one of the farms that we work with, they actually reached out and they're like, "Hey, our farm is full. We can't save our tree." And we're like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So he was sharing that with me, and it was so exciting to hear. But we're going to continue to plant trees at the other farm, and hopefully we'll fill up theirs. But then they were asking if we would be interested in planting trees at some of the surrounding, co-op farms. And we're like, yeah, absolutely. That's us making a difference and how we can make a difference for people. So I think that's one of our big things that I love that we do. We do so many different initiatives, like during the pandemic when that hit, right? All the to-go deliveries that everyone was experiencing. And so, like, how do we offset the carbon footprint for that? And we partnered with Grassroots here in Colorado to help offset and neutralize that carbon footprint. So we're always, again, that's more, Clint's forte in his wheelhouse, but he's always looking for things that we can do as a company. So
And locally, we have our teams, do things for like Earth Day. We plant, we go to local gardens and we'll do like Pancake Day and Bacon Day and raise money to give back to those organizations.
So wonderful. I hope for everyone who's listening, you could definitely tell the culture that's part of this wonderful brand. Um, I I always ask my production team to try and research, what do they do for fun so we can kind of get personal a little bit. And I giggled when I got back, not learning that you're a mother of two, 20-ish-year-old daughters, but I've got like Denver Women's Leaders Association, the Snooze Changemaker Board, the Snooze Crisis Management Team, the Snooze Menuing Debate. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, and sheet cake. And I sit on sheet cakes too, which is women empowerment. It's like how can we take our women in snooze and continue to lift them up and grow them and inspire them. And that one is just so it resonates with me so much. Obviously being a mom of two daughters as well, and just being a woman in this industry, especially in supply chain where you 20 years ago, there was not hardly any women in the supply chain, if any, right? And so the She Cakes is just so inspiring, and we meet, every month, and we have an agenda, and we do like a round table in the beginning, sort of like a groundbreaker, icebreaker thing, and just great conversations and being vulnerable with each other and talking about our challenges but also recognizing us, right, as women and lifting each other up. So that one's my favorite.
I always ask at the end of the show, we're not quite there yet, but almost, where people can get a hold of you. My hope is that when those are able to connect with you, either just understanding examples of these different task forces or groups that you guys have set up so that they can set some support up within their organizations for their staff, like She Cakes. That is so cool.
Yeah.
Little bit of a final mile, more rapid fire style questions, if you don't mind here, to kind of tie a big bow on this beautiful conversation with you. Who has influenced your thinking most in your career?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know if I could pinpoint one person. I could pinpoint a couple that have really shaped me the most. And I would say, my mentor I mentioned in the beginning, I started working for him at 15, and um, he passed away recently unfortunately at a young age due to cancer. But he just took me under my wing, and he was so humble and so influential to me. And I like to say that I'm humble as well, and it's not about me. It's about us as a team and a village and what it takes to accomplish things. And I say the village because I'm going to get to somebody else, but he just very hands-on, very patient, um and wanted people to succeed. And he reminds me of Snooze in the Way because he was very, very successful in the Detroit metropolitan area, but he always gave back. It like he always gave back and was always engaged in our community and wanted people to succeed, and he wanted to teach people, and he'd be in the restaurants constantly hands-on as the co-founder and the owner, right? And he was a chef by nature too. So um him definitely for sure. Um I think I worked with Andrew, who was our CMO for 8.5 years. And just I have a lot of respect for him and his leadership style. And so for me, I think I have a lot of takeaways from him going from a director to a VP. And just watching and learning. I'm a sponge at times when I observe people. I say I might not I talk a lot, but I might not always talk a lot in some situations because I'm observing.
Yeah.
Just he just shaped like how I look at things and how I evaluate things. And I'm very much an analytical person, so I do analyze. But just his leadership style really has had an impact on me and how I lead.
So cool.
But those are two that stand out. But there's so many people our CEO, even David, like he's such a people person, and he's very hands-on as well. And he's not afraid to go bust a table and spend Mother's Day in our restaurants helping our teams and supporting them. And he listens so intently. And I love that about him. And he challenges me, I report to him, so he challenges me in my way of my thinking and perspectives. And so I'll call him out as well. Yeah.
Our industry is such a big relationship business. And so this question is a hard one because, I mean, another part of the job is making decisions. So our thinking is an important factor in it. And so many answers surround a little bit of what you kind of just did there, where it's people that have influenced the way that you're looking out at the world based on how you observe them doing so, but also those that challenge you so that you rethink kind of how you're interpreting a situation or a decision.
Yeah, I mean, like even our suppliers, I have great relationships and longevity. I think of Fresh Concepts, and I work with two people over there. I've been working with them for 25 years, and so I think there's always a takeaway. I think you can always have a takeaway, from somebody. And, so I think it's a lot of people that influence, and even it's not just people I work with, it's people out, externally too.
I think it's never just one, but it's a lot of people that can help contribute to how we do things. And I love your answer there.
Yeah, that village, that's where that came in. Andrew always says it takes a village, and that always resonated with me.
It does take a village. How about when you think about the next generation of supply chain leaders or folks, even just coming in to be part of the staff there, what skills do you think are going to be non-negotiable for them as they kind of enter up into our industry?
Can I say AI? No. I mean, gosh, AI is just crazy. Like that's something I'm honestly leaning into, because I feel like it is the future, like having that digitized integration and dashboards and that real-time visibility. I think the next generation, it's not always textbook. It's really not. And supply chain, I say that I don't think people really knew what supply chain was until the pandemic hit. And now everyone's aware of what supply chain is. And so you can go to school and read the textbooks and all the things, but you have to really have that hands-on experience because it can change day to day and it can look different day to day. And I think you just have to really be flexible and patient, and you have to definitely hold people accountable. I think that's a huge thing, and set your standards and hold to those expectations. But supply chain's crazy. There's never a dull moment in the restaurant industry, but there's definitely never a dull moment in supply chain because of all the layers. But I think if anything, it's building those relationships again. And I go back to that because I truly believe that building and having a good rapport with all the people involved is crucial. And when you have that transparency, and you're talking to each other, whether it's good or bad or ugly, right? It's about collaborating and finding a solution together that is a win-win. It's not a win-win on both sides. Like it needs to be, we all want to be profitable, we all want to be successful, but it's not like give me, right? And you got to give and take. And so I think those are the biggest things. And that's not textbook taught. Like you can't teach that. That's something that you have to experience and build. And I think those would be my biggest things. Yeah. But yeah, like AI is another thing and what that's going to look like and how that's going to shape our industry and all the integration through that with visibility of like real time inventory, right? Or integrating that with the customer and the distributors and the manufacturers and how all that's gonna how that it's starting to shift and you're starting to see that some of that a little bit here and there, but I think it's still a few years down the road where they figure it out.
It's an exciting time to be in, just with this rapidly happening before our eyes and changing so fast, and also advancing so quickly. We're getting educated and just being such a tech-focused organization on how to use AI within our jobs, but we're challenged to just speak up and out about how we're using it outside of work, right? And I had the idea given to me in that call, how someone's using it to actually meal plan and scrub their neighborhood coupons and all the rewards for deals and put together an ingredient list and then cross over the SKUs for 2 or 3 meals. And I'm like, my mind blew. I was like, as a mom, or I was like, I am so happy I heard that today and I'm going to try that. It really is mind blowing for sure.
I always feel good when I can tell my kids something that they don't know. Yeah. I'm like, oh, just do this on ChatGPT. And they're like, what?
I know. Okay, so for those that want to get a hold of you, Sydney, and just connect for a variety of different reasons, heard something today that they want to follow up on, where can people find you?
You can reach me via email at ckeys@snoozeeatery.com. You can find me on LinkedIn under Cindy Keys. I do have an Instagram, kickbutt11.
Well, I cannot tell you how much I've enjoyed this time with you. You are such a wonderful, beautiful person, and you are involved in so many terrific initiatives that Snooze as a whole, I think it stands as apart in this industry and is a great example for so many brands in terms of ideation and innovation. Again, hot goes off to your impact team, to your marketing team. Really, really enjoyed this conversation and just how you shined a light on the brand today.
Well, thank you. And it's been such a pleasure, Lauren. It was so great to meet you in person. And now seeing you again, it's been a pleasure. And I've really enjoyed this. I thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. This has been another awesome episode of Grounded. See you next time.
That's a wrap on this episode of Grounded. We've covered a lot of ground as we explored what it really takes to run food service behind the scenes. For show notes, highlights, and our latest market insights, visit us at groundedonthepod.com. Grounded is powered by the Buyer's Edge platform, delivering smarter solutions, greater efficiency, and real savings through connected tech, powerful data, and industry expertise. For more information and to get a personal demo of the Buyer's Edge platform, email me at lauren.mitchell@producealliance.com. And if you liked what you heard, subscribe so you don't miss an episode.